Welcome to Efficient Paging in SQL Server by a language integrated query. My name is Kevin Hazard. I'm a Microsoft MVP living in Richmond, Virginia. Today we're going to talk briefly about how you can use a couple of the interesting extension methods in LINQ to make paging in SQL Server very simple. Let's jump right into the code. We can see that I'm using the AdventureWorks data context, which has an entity known as the sales orders headers, which is one of the tables in the AdventureWorks database made available as a class. While I iterate over the sales order headers, each item I'll call P, and we can see that each one of those headers has a sales territory, a contact, and a sales order details. The sales territory in turn has a name, which we're going to make sure all of our records match the name Northeast. Notice the literal string there, but I'm going to come back to that in a minute. It's important. We're going to project into the output then the first and last name from the contact, and then the sum of the product of the order quantity and price for each one of the order details. You can see then that LINQ to SQL makes it very simple to do filtering and to do what's known as projection onto the output sequence. Let's run this in the debugger and see what the code looks like. We can see here, if we hover over the query, one of the nice things about the debugger and the way that LINQ to SQL works is you can see right there what the transact SQL is going to look like when we run it. Now, rather than try to examine it here, let's go back over and look at this in Notepad where I've captured it ahead of time so we can analyze it. You can see that some math is being done on the quantity times price. We're picking off each of the sales orders that match for an outer query, and then we're going to sum up those values as a new field called sales total. Of course, that's the third field that was projected in our query, and you can see the math and aggregation that's required to do that. The first columns are the first and last name, which you can see come from a table aliased as T2, which is the contact table, and of course both of the join operations that are required to make the sales territory and contact projections possible are there. Lastly, we can see that there's a where clause on table T1, which is the territory, where we're going to make sure that the name of the territory is equal to some variable at P0. P0 is a variable that is made available by LINQ to SQL rather than putting the literal string Northeast into the query, because as we know, SQL injection attacks typically take advantage of the fact that we're building strings for queries instead of passing variables when we should. So it's good to see that LINQ to SQL is doing the right thing. Now when we run this query, we can see in the browser that we have way too many records, and human beings are going to want us to page those records and give them some navigation buttons for moving through that set. So let's take a look at what that paging code would look like. Here we can see that we've declared a page number. I'm going to start with page 3. And I'm going to pick up a page size of 20. I mean, in a real-world application, you wouldn't do that. You would give them controls to do it. But here, just for demonstration purposes, let's move to page 3, where each page is 20 records in size. So to do that, let's take advantage of an extension method in LINQ to SQL called skip. This allows us to skip a certain number of records. In this case, because we want page 3, we'll skip to page 2 times 20, or skip the number of records 2 times 20 to get to the third page. That is 40 records, and then we're going to pull off the 20 records beginning there. And if you do the math in your head, you can see that's exactly what we want. So again, using skip and take to do what we want. Well, the question is this efficient? Let's take a look at it in the debugger and see what it generates. Now again, you can see, just as before, when we hover over it, we can see the query. Here we can now see, though, that very quickly there's a T6 and a T5, whereas in the previous query we only had T0 through T4 that were created by the LINQ to SQL compiler, if you will. And so again, I've captured this ahead of time. Let's just pop over and take a look at what that would look like. We can analyze it a little better. Now here we can see that there is our original query that we didn't do paging is still here. It's sort of the meat of the query. It's the inside. What's different is now that we're injecting the row number over our 3 projected fields into the query and calling that new thing T6, And then from T6 we're selecting all of those values that we projected in, or that we made available by T5. And now here's sort of the magic. Because the row number was injected as this row called, or this column called row number, or this attribute called row number, we can say where the row number is between, and in SQL Server between means between and including. So between and including at P1 plus 1 and at P1 plus 2, and you can guess that P1 must be 40, so we're going to pick up record 41 through record 40 plus 20, that is 60. So this basically gives us the ability to build an extremely efficient query over that set without having to actually wait for all of the results. SQL Server is able, with this row number function, to create a very, very streamlined mechanism for pulling exactly the ones we want by those coordinates, that is the skip amount and the take amount. So let's take a look at that in the browser and see what we get. Oops, here we go. There we go. So here's the third page, including the 20 records beginning at row 40 or 41. Wow, that was simple. Using the take and skip extension methods in SQL make it super simple to create intuitive code from a readability standpoint and understandability standpoint, but it also creates highly efficient Transact SQL queries as well. I hope you found this informative. Please visit my blog at www.gotnet.biz/blog, or just Google for Kevin Hazard, you'll find me. Drop me a note, and if you have other things you'd like me to do screencasts on in the future, let me know that too. Thanks, and have a great day.